And then he's like, well, we had someone come in with less injuries than your cousin, and they passed away, and your cousin's going to die. It was like really harsh. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I just pushed him off of me, and I pushed my way into where they have my cousin in the emergency room. And this is where it gets kind of weird because it's kind of amazing story. So I walk in and I just put my hand on Carmen's leg, and I feel this bolt of lightning or energy or something move through, and it literally rippled through her body, like her body literally. And I was like, oh, okay, she's going to be fine. Like I knew, it's not like I was healing her, but I knew the condition of her body, that she was going to be fine, like she was going to be more than fine. So I was like completely calm. I was like, oh no, she's going to be fine. And then with that same nurse came and grabbed my arm. But when he did, I saw a scene out of his life where I saw him the night before beating either his wife or girlfriend or something. He was like hurting her and like hitting her. And I was like, ah, and I just ran to the bathroom, and I was like in the bathroom, like on the floor. I was like, what is going on? And I could feel everyone's thoughts and I knew their thoughts and felt their feelings. And a nice woman came in, nice nurse, and she was like, well, we need to examine you. And I'm like, I'm not coming out of here. Like I think I was in shell shock or something. And I'm like, I'm not coming. And I said, I'll come out as long as that nurse, if you keep him away from me. And so I went and they x-rayed my neck. And this is again where it gets kind of groovy, because they told me, like, came back, we said we have bad news for you. You have a fracture in your neck, or your neck is broken basically. And I said, oh no. That was not part of my life review. And I did the same thing. I just put my hand, I remember putting my hand on my neck like this, and it literally was like hot and glued to my neck. And I was like, oh no, 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 no. That wasn't part of my life review. That wasn't part of what this presence told me. I'm not supposed to have a broken neck. And so I said, you need to take that x-ray again. And they like, no, we're sure. And I go, no, you need to take it again. So they took it. The second one, there was no break. The third one, there was no break. The fourth one, they were like, we don't know what's going on. And so I was like, I'm not staying here. There's no break in my neck. I want to go home. I don't know. There's this thing, you don't want to stay in a hospital. I want to go. And they said, okay, we'll sign off on this. We're not responsible business. And I said, that's fine. So fast forward a couple weeks after the accident, I go to see Carmen. And this was, I guess I had a lot of guilt, because I had invited her on this trip, and she was supposed to come have fun, not get so hurt and really severely injured. When I went to the hospital, she was still in coma. And then her mom and everybody was like looking at me very angrily. I guess they were all like, I was the one who invited her on the trip. It was my friend who was driving, and this has happened to their daughter. I get it. It's hard. Those are hard things. And they were projecting their anger onto me, which I already felt bad enough about the whole thing. But so I walked in, and nobody even really said hi to me or anything, but I put my hand on her. Let me go back a minute. When I walked in and I saw her in the bed, I didn't recognize her, because as I said, she was this beautiful woman with long, flowing, gorgeous, thick brown hair, big brown eyes, big, really beautiful, soft doe skin. She was just gorgeous. And so when I saw her in the bed, it was like her face was swollen. She had rubber bands on her teeth. She had broken every bone in her face, including her eye sockets, like everything. And so I didn't recognize her. I was like, it scared me. Like, it literally scared me. And then I calmed myself down. I remember literally saying, this is your cousin Carmen, and you love her. And so I walked over to her and I touched her, and she opened her eyes. And nobody could understand like how she came out of the coma. Like, her mother and the doctors and then everyone who was in the room was like shocked. And she insisted on getting out of the bed, and she walked over to me, and she had her little IV. And I just remember her like shaking and walking, and everyone helping her, but they were happy that she was trying to move. And she told me, Chrystal, and this relates back to my childhood again. Remember, I told you I wanted affirmation from God. If Moses could like move the waters, then he could show me. And she says, Chrystal, I'm in the light. I'm gleaming. I've never been so radiant. I'm a star. I was I knew exactly what she meant. I mean, I think her mother was like, that's brain damage. And everybody was like, no. But for me, it was a profound message, because when I had fallen out of my body when I was a young girl, ended up in that serene time and space, I was told that this is time and space. There's no empty space in the universe. Those punctuated lights are stars, and that's what we are. And she said, I'm a star. And it was like, my whole body got chills, like it was just such an affirmation for me. And she went back to her bed and laid down and went back into coma. And I came back to see her again. And every time I would come and see her, I would just touch her and she would come out of coma. And it started to freak out her parents, truthfully, and they invited me not to come anymore. But I get it. It's probably, I don't know what was going on. But the second time I came to see her, I remember her waking up, and it was really, it literally, I can understand what was scary, because I would just touch her and she would like, sit up. And so, and then she would just tell me things. She would share with me things. Like she showed me one time that I have three radiant beings of light that have been my guardian angels for not only this life, but since the beginning of time and for all of existence. They've been with me, and they love me, and they're caring for me, and things like this. She would tell me just really interesting things. Oh, and then she did one of the times when she jumped up, she said, oh, and by the way, don't forget to put in your book that sound and light is the future of medicine. Oh my gosh, this sound and light thing. Anyway, I was uninvited to continue to see Carmen. So we lost contact. She moved home and had a long recovery. The amazing thing about Carmen's story, though, is that she had a full recovery, even though she was supposed to be a vegetable. They predicted she would be a vegetable for the rest of her life. The only thing, she had a really high IQ and a really beautiful music ability, which was enhanced by the accident, by the way. Posteriorly, she was the lead clarinetist for the Dallas Opera. But the only thing she forgot was 10 years being married to 2 alcoholic husbands. I'm gonna say, if you don't believe we live in a kind and loving universe, that story right there should prove to you. And posteriorly, even though she wasn't this radiant beauty, her inner beauty was so amazing, right? And she met the love of her life, and she got married, and she has her own estate company. Anyway, Carmen's life turned out just fine.
Wow.
And better than before her accident, when she was really searching and really sad. And anyway, so it was a hard 18 operations is a lot. It was not an easy experience for Carmen, for sure. But after that, I moved into my own space. And I remember, like, for the first 2 weeks after the car accident, I didn't even want to come out of my room. I just closed the curtains. I do remember, like, having extreme sensitivity to light and sound. And, you know, I'd always been that way anyway, but it was really magnified after the accident. Like, I really didn't like going outside in the bright light. I didn't like loud sounds. And I was seeing lights around people. I could feel their feelings, and I knew all their sadness and all their joys. And one thing that was really surprising to me was how much fear and sadness people have. And I just wanted to hug everybody. I just wanted to tell them, like, hey, you're so beautiful. You're doing such a good job. I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. You know, the things that you've been through, they're so hard. And this life you chose is because you're a warrior of light. And you said, bring on the hard stuff and don't be so hard on yourself. And I love you. And my soul loves you. And I'm so proud of you. And that's when I was writing the book, which, by the way, I just published it. Woo woo.
Congratulations.
It's called Love Letters to Your Soul, and it's on Amazon now. The book that I wrote a book when I was in college. I went back to college, by the way, after I came back from this near-death experience. I figured if I was going to have to write a book, then I should take some writing classes. And I remember going in as a non-degree seeking student. My former husband was on the board of this college, this university, and I was like literally sitting in classes the very next day when I told him I want to go to college, I want to take some writing classes. He made a few phone calls, and the divine synchronicities, they were enrolling at that time, and so I was sitting in classes the next day. And the first thing, his name was Frederick Turner, my first teacher, my first class at UTD. in Dallas, Texas. And the first thing he said is they've made a new discovery, that there's no empty space in the universe. There's this thing called dark matter. And I was like, oh, I already knew that. But my perspective was even different than that, because I had seen that there's no empty space, but everything is geometric forms interlocking with different hues of light, and everything, one thing affected the other thing, but it was all geometric. I guess you could say the whole entire universe is math, which is why I guess I always wanted to be good at math, but I'm not. That's another story, another life. But anyway, yes, my book is out. It's called Love Letters to Your Soul. And I was inspired to put the sheep on there. And everyone's always asking me why. Truthfully, I don't know why. I just listened. As I studied on sheep, though, I found that they're very gentle animals. They resemble a spiritual community in the sense that they gather. They're very benevolent. Their whole life is in service, and they help each other. For example, if one sheep falls over, another sheep, it can't get up by itself, by the way, and this I did not know. Another sheep has to come and help that sheep up. And so I feel like that's what we do as a spiritual community, is that even these podcasts that you and I and the community that we share these stories with, we help each other by picking each other up, basically, when we can't get up. And our stories and our lives and our energy support each other. But I remember when I was going through this 20 years, by the way, I say I just wrote this book, but I like to put it into the context of feeling like this unworthy child who secretly never felt good enough. And I remember my mom telling me, because I was a pretty little girl, and she was like, use your head for something other than an ornament. So I always had felt like I wasn't smart enough, and that I wasn't like, that secretly I was just fake. I wasn't real, and there was nothing of substance to me, is how I felt. And so when I went back to college, and by the way, academics were super easy for me for some reason. I think because I'm super diligent and I pay attention, especially in your 30s, it's easier. But I graduated cum laude, but I did have to take fundamental math twice.
I love it.
Yeah, just to get a B in statistics. I call it statistics, but my degree is in arts and humanities, and my major was in literary studies. And I took that because that was where I could get as much philosophy in as possible. So I wrote this book, but the point of it is that when I was in college, I wrote my first book. It was a really quite sad book. It was about my childhood, and it was really quite cathartic, but it really wasn't the book that I was told to write, but it was the book I needed to write. And it was like a lot of healing, because I wrote the stories of a little girl, and then I juxtaposed that with how it had served me as an adult and what I had learned from it and how it had changed me. And one thing I would notice as I was going through my healing process is I found a lot of really beautiful, I went through all the psychological books for sure, because I read that if you come from this kind of a background, that you're destined basically to repeat that or inflict the same behavior upon your own children, or repeat the same bad behavior yourself. And I did not want to do that. And they said that education was the only way that you could somehow get out of that, break that chain, cycle breaker, become a cycle breaker, which is really against the odds. It's very few people ever do this. It's very hard, and you really need to incorporate your angels and guides. That's all I can say. I had a lot of help. I always prayed for wisdom. When I was a kid, and I would go out and sit on, I'd sneak out the window and sit on my mom's car, like old Chevy, and I'd look up at the stars at night. And I remember always just praying for wisdom. Like, I never prayed for money or success or anything. I just said, if I had wisdom, if I really could understand, then everything else I could be able to figure everything out. And so I was always wanting to find wisdom. In a lot of books I found, like the psychological books of self-healing, they were very helpful as far as like how to retrain my personality and break habits and this and that and the other. But there was still a hole, like a big void, like an empty space that needed healing. And then I went into all the spiritual books. I went into the Buddhist philosophy and the Hindu philosophy and the Christian philosophy. And again, I found in every single tradition, I found such beautiful insights and things, but I couldn't really sign up completely for any of it.
So just like little pieces of truth in each.
Yes, and I'm really grateful for that truth. But the truth that I knew to be true was unconditional, absolute love. And so I wanted to write the book that I could never find. I wanted to write a book that when you open it, you would find a faithful friend, someone who cares about you, someone who loves you, someone who on a soul level has been with you since the beginning of time. And the reason I say that is because I believe that if we're, and that's why I told you when I met you today, that if we're in each other's presence, then our souls are aligned and probably for lifetimes. And so I wrote this, I call it love letters, because it was as though my soul wrote this letter to your soul. And so that it could be part of your healing and your empowerment, and so that you could share your light in the way that's unique to you in your voice. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to find the book that I could never find, I wrote. And it was a book of absolute unconditional love. Directly, it's so funny because like even on social media, like I'll write whatever I write and I'll sign it like I love you. And it's such a hard thing for people because love has been, just like the word God, love has been so distorted. People associate love with betrayal, with a bad love affair, with unkind parents, with a friend or somebody that hurt them. But that's not what I'm talking about. When I say I love you, I say I love you. I love your soul. I love your light beyond all your good or bad behavior. I don't even care about that because, again, the screen is innocent. The screen is pure. The screen is unscathed. And when you look for the light in someone and you see, they feel that you're seeing that light in them, there's a spark of recognition. Even if it's disregarded, it's in that moment. And so that's the gift of this book. And it's taken a long time to write it and a lot of personal healing and a journey of my soul to be able to embody. It's almost like surreal that it's actually done because it seemed like such an impossible feat. The book is it's a piece of my soul, a piece of my heart that I'm just giving to whoever it finds and serves, that it would be a benefit to. So
Love
that's
that.
why I'm started out on the whole thing of sharing my story and getting out there because I feel like I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to share it in a way that would do it justice, the whole experience of, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes about their personal beliefs, about religion or anything. I just want to say that whatever your belief system is, if you can add into that a little more love, a little more unconditional love, it will enhance that. So I never want to tell someone like your religion is wrong or you shouldn't do that. I just say if you're going to be a Christian, be a good Christian, like a real Christian, like a really loving Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist, and really honor the path you're on, but come from a place of unconditional love. And then the other thing about love is I remember when I was starting this journey to write a book about love is all that matters, I said, well, if I'm going to write a book about love, then I should know what love is, the truth of love, not like the human expression and my absent father who you never hear about because he was absent. But it was a really beautiful experience. It was like I was in this great sorrow. And then in that moment, like the clouds just opened up and the light started pouring in. And I was like, I was so happy. I was just so happy that I could love like that I could have unconditional love. And I will always be in his debt for that. I
Oh,
did not know that existed. Of course, you love your children in that way, but I did not know that kind of love existed for another human being. And because your parents, you put all these conditions on parents, but
that's
when you love,
beautiful.
thank you.
So
I
you know
felt,
what I think, Chrystal?
what?
I think your prayer to God was answered. I think that you received wisdom. Everything that has come out of your mouth
Thank
has
you.
been wisdom. Is you brought that back from the other side. So I'd really like to ask you a few questions about your near-death experience.
Okay.
So you mentioned, first of all, that when you came out of it, you were seeing the light, the auras around people. You were hearing their thoughts, which is very empathic, very common also for near-death experiencers to have. At what point, if at all, did that begin to diminish, go away, or do you still have remnants of that now?
So that was again very disconcerting for me. I did not want, I felt like I was invading people privacy. Like I don't even want to tell you some of the things that I saw and heard. Like I told you I saw this guy beating his girlfriend. Like that's not something I wanted to know. And so I remember just being angry about this. I don't want this. And I eventually learned how to, I feel like it was like a door that opened that will never be closed, by the way, like it's forever open. But now I know how to stop it. Like I don't allow it. Like I don't, and I know it always freaks people out. So I don't want them to feel that I'm doing that because it's not my goal. But So the whole point of it is that these stories that I see, that these feelings that people have are transient and not real. It's not the truth, and it's just a story. And at any time you want, you can shift timelines and shift stories. At any time you want, at any time you want, you can flip that story. So I don't ever, they say you never step into the same river twice. So I don't ever. My goal is when I see someone not to see that story. So I just disregard the stories immediately because I don't want to remember them. I don't remember the stories, but I remember the love.
Oh, that's nice.
I remember
What about the healing? So you had the ability to put your hand on the back of your neck and it got warm and you were able to heal that fracture in your neck. You placed your hands on your cousin Carmen and it rippled through her. So you obviously came back immediately and still had some of that power to heal. And you were also given a very profound message that light and music frequency is going to be the future of healing. So I'd
Mhm.
like to know, do you still have the ability to call on that healing through your hands, number one? And number two, can you speak to, because it's been 27 years ago this week that you had this experience, can you speak to what you now understand about the future? Because it's
So those are all really good questions. So I'll start with the first one. So yes, at the hospital, and the first thing that happened is I felt this bolt of energy move through me. So let me just say it wasn't me doing a healing. It was a conduit of energy at that moment because of the timeline, I guess, that we had both picked. And um, I don't feel like it was me. Like I wasn't personally going, I want to heal Carmen. I was just touching her because I loved her. That's it. I think if anything, love heals. And when they told me my neck was broken, I just clearly remembered that was not true in my experience with this presence, this being, this divine light. I clearly knew that was not part because I was shown this is possible lines. These are other possibles. And I'm like, oh no, there's like a bleep in the matrix there. That's not true. That is not true. And I really believe there's forces moving in this universe that I think that would have been a possibility for me and maybe closely aligned with the current timeline that I'm on. And so I think it was so close that it could have happened. But in that moment, I made that decision. No, that's not happening. So I don't know that it was necessarily me healing. I do think that we all are healing conduits. That I do believe. I think that when you love someone and when you love yourself enough that you radiate more positivity, a higher frequency, that your very presence it becomes healing. They've done all kinds of studies on this, even with plants. People can have the power you've probably seen some of Dr. Emoto's work with the power of words and energy. So am I a healer? I think yes, we are all healers. Do I go out on a daily basis and think I'm going to try and heal somebody? No. What I've worked on always is because I don't feel like I know, like, it sounds a little bit harsh, but the most important thing for them might be to be sick. It might be the journey of so who am I to say I'm going to go and heal that? No, I'm not. I'm going to love you and into the timeline that you choose for your soul. And so it's never been a goal of mine. I never even pray for things to happen a certain way. I just pray for the highest and best for all in that moment.
me
Yeah,
too.
of course you do. And so I never really pray. I do feel sorrow for people when they're suffering. Like this is one thing I think is really missing in this whole near-death experience conversation is that people really do feel pain. And yes, on a soul level, they're not. But in this experience, on this life, there is great suffering and sorrow. And I think people I guess they call it spiritual bypassing. They just, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. No, well, pain hurts. Put your finger in the fire and just tell me it doesn't hurt. Of course it hurts. And so I have a lot of compassion. I know it's not the truth, the ultimate truth, but I also know that baby is suffering. And so I just want to I don't, it's not up to me to teach about everyone everything, and their soul will find its own way, but it's up to me to love them while they find their own truth. That's what I get to do. That's what I choose to do. And that's my great gift and my great joy is that I get to be part and all the suffering and all the childhood. And I want to come back to my mom because I feel like she gets a bad rap with my story because although she was, you know, not the best mom, of course.
And you picked her.
And I picked her. But when you put things into context, like my mom was abused as a child. She was the eldest of 5. And from what I heard, her childhood was horrible. She also ran away at 17. Like she got pregnant really early. She was a rebel. She was trying to be something in the 1950s and 60s that wasn't available for women at that time. And she was pushed down and pushed back. And she was beautiful, and she was never acknowledged for her. She was like Mensa smart, and she was never acknowledged for her intelligence. And I feel that part of her just gave up, and she started drinking to comfort herself because there was no one there for her. And in her, one of my things when I asked God when I was a baby, when I was a child, and I fell off, is if you could help my mom stop drinking. But I want to share this with you because it's a really important part of the story, is that when I left home at 17, it broke my mom's heart. It's gonna make me cry. I'm such a baby. It broke my mom's heart because she saw that I think there's some kind of recognition that me leaving was and what was happening to me was a result of her, partly of what she had done to me. And there was great sorrow for her. So she stopped drinking immediately, like cold turkey, turned super ultra Christian. She was in the whole, I don't know if you remember Tammy Faye with the
Oh,
eyelashes.
yes.
That was my mom's guru back in the day. And so she completely pendulumed, and I guess this is common for some people, but and went to the other way. By the end of her life, which she passed away a couple years ago, she was a minister, and she was in a healing modality kind of church, and she was it was more groovy than Christian or Baptist or something like that, but it was really beautiful. And she was really impacting the world. Like when I went to her funeral, like stories I heard about my mom were so touching that I didn't know this woman the way that these other people, like people said they were going to commit suicide, but she went out of her way to be there for them and to care for them and to bring them food. And one lady came into the shelter where my mom was working, and she wanted the shirt that my mom had, and there was no other shirt. So my mom went and got a t-shirt and put it on and gave the woman the shirt. And just these stories about my mom that truthfully in her passing, I learned so much about her that I didn't even know. And it was such a beautiful thing. We had reconciled as an adult because I didn't really have a relationship with her because for me, the way that I survived was to get away from her, like as far away as possible. And it was hard to bridge that gap and come back. But there was one point in my life as an older woman, as a more mature woman, and I looked at my mom, and she was such a lioness when she was young, and I was so afraid of her. And I remember everybody was in awe of my mom and afraid of my mom, and you just didn't mess with her. And then I saw her, and she was just this feeble old woman with varicose veins and overweight and shuffling around. And I was like, and here I was still on the defense as the little girl, was still on the defense from this woman, still holding this wall between us. And in that moment of recognition, I let the walls come down. But so I'm grateful for that because before she passed, is that we had reconciliated, and I had found inside of me the wisdom to know that she was the right mom for me. And I was really proud of her at the end because I feel like I always said I didn't want to cheat, but I feel like I did cheat because I've always been connected to angels and guides, and I've had near-death experiences and popping out of my body very untethered. And I'm not sure my mom had that. I feel like when you have drugs and alcohol, it shuts down a lot of that possible thing. I'm not saying all drugs, but I'm saying like some drugs what I've seen is that it puts holes in your aura, and it needs some healing. You'll need some healing if you've had just alcohol and drugs and stuff. Even super overeating, anything that's in excess that's going to hurt your body, that it hurts your soul, that takes over you, that becomes, you are no longer the master. That thing, whatever it is, becomes the master. But my mom beat it in the end, and she went through the dark night of soul because she stopped drinking, stopped smoking. I have so much compassion for her, and I know if one thing I hope that she knows is that I'm grateful. Like I know that she came in and she said, I'll be the one with the inclination for alcohol. I'll be the one to abuse. I'll be the one to do this stuff to make this strong woman so that you can make a difference. And again, somebody can look in my eyes and they're like, oh, poor pitiful me. And I'm like, oh, really? You'll make it. You're fine. I've been there. If I can do it, you can do it. And by the way, I'm here for you. One of the things I did not have is I never had someone that was there for me. I do now. I have to say, my husband, he's such a loving man. I remember one of the criteria for me to get married again was like unconditional love. And he doesn't even really ascribe to the things that I do, but he respects me and honors that. And I know he loves me unconditionally, and he must, because we're so different. He's just like, there's my wife.
That's
Just
amazing.
doing her thing. Yeah.
So
It's
I
really
want to talk
cool.
to you a little bit about your life review because it's one of my obsessions around the people who've had near-death experiences.
Okay.
So you experienced everything from your perspective, from others' perspectives, and the ripple effect. Can you
Mhm.
share with us one of the things that you experienced that had a positive ripple effect that, as you look back on it, really surprised you?
I can. I remember there was a girl when I was in middle school, and she had some mental deficiencies. I guess they would call it retarded back in that day, but it would be more like probably autism or something this day. But people were really unkind to her, and I became her guardian. I was always beating people up, believe it or not. If they were being, I would never fight purposely, but I would always defend. I'm the defender. If you have a problem, you want me around because I'm gonna like get in it, you know. Uh, So you wanted me on your side to defend you. So this little girl, people were always picking on her and doing unkind things, as teenagers tend to do. And they would put tacks on her chair, and I'd say, don't sit on it. Or they'd give her gum that was laxative, or, you know. So I would always tell her, you stay close to me. Don't go far. You sit next to me. You walk with me. And so she became like my best friend. Like we were always in the bathroom together. I was always protecting her. And I always, as much as I could, I protected her until like our school separated. And so anyway, I was shown that act and how it was so important for her and how it rippled out. But one of the most shocking things is that fast forward and like a year later, I was in a kind of a ghetto school where it was a lot of like racial things going on, and there was like different groups, like this group hated that group, and there was the freak, I guess they call them the freak group or whatever. And there was this group of girls who, for whatever reason, did not like me. And it was, I was cornered in the bathroom of this, and they had like switches out. And like they were gonna, you think you're so pretty, we're gonna like show you how pretty. And then like this, their leader or whatever, like the leader of this like little gang happened to walk in, and she like stood in front of these girls and she said, you want a piece of this? You come to me. And the girls, whoa, and they all left. But it was like just poignant that moment that she came in. And then I was shocked. And she said, I've seen you. And I was like, okay, I saw you. You were always protecting that. She unkindly said that retarded girl. You were always protecting that girl. And she said, anyone has anything to do with you, you call me. I'm here for you. And I was shown in this near-death experience that those two scenes were related, if that makes sense. My helping her set me off into a timeline where I would be helped. And it not only helped her whole ripple and all this, but it was like, it was reciprocal. What you do comes back to you, both good and bad. And yeah, I never forgot that lesson that was so poignant for me, and it was shown to me. But there were so many things that I can't even tell you, but it was mostly the things that you don't think about, like a kind word to someone, helping a stranger. Not, you would think like at the end of your life, like what's most important is getting your name on a school like brick or something, or doing something for society or whatever. But those aren't necessarily, and basically that's not, that's bad. If that's your sole mission, that is good. But what really is important is like the intention behind it. If your intention is just that you want to be acknowledged for that, but you really don't care about people, you just want to get a brick on the school wall and you want to be acknowledged, or have your own hall in a museum or something, not really care about the arts or not really care about people, then even working at a shelter, if you don't really care, you're just like doing it to get it on your resume for college or something, but you really don't care, is a very different act than actually caring and being there. So the things that that are most important are like everyday simple things, like everyday acts of kindness. And like, I never have been a celebrity follower. I don't really care about celebrities. Not that I don't care about them as a person. The fact that they're a celebrity means nothing to me. But I always care about people. Even when I worked and when I went to school, I knew the ladies serving food in the line. Like I knew their names, like I knew who they were, and I would say hi to them. They were real people. Or the janitor, like I knew he had a name too. And I think because I did come from such poverty, like I literally lived on welfare, and I lived in the ghettos, and and then I had such opulence as well, because I went from that to being private jets and living in various houses and just having a very different lifestyle. But I always knew what it was like to be that person. And so I always cared. I always cared about them. And I don't know. I think if I had one message, it would just be that you may not know how you're impacting people, but a kind word and a caring touch is may be the most poignant thing that you ever do in your life. And you may change universes, because not only did that person not take their life, did that person not go out and hurt someone or do something awful, it's a universe that it's been created. Like everything, it creates universes. This one person didn't kill themselves, and so they found the love of their life, and they had children and grandchildren, and that child became the president, and that president cared about social justice, and you're part of that. And all you did is care about this person in that moment. And usually it's not even something you can put your finger on while you're here. It's just like those around, like everyone just being kinder. And also, I think one of the things that's important to say is like to be kinder to yourself.
That's a big one, because not everybody finds it easy to look in the mirror and say that they even like themselves, let alone that they love themselves.
To bestow upon yourself the kindness that you would bestow upon another. I always say you can't give what you don't have. Don't give it to yourself. And you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of care, and you are worthy of knowing your own need for comfort and care. And the things that you would offer to someone else, offer it to yourself. Find a way to offer it to yourself. I say, take the long way home, get your toes in the grass. And for example, I love white roses. I just love white roses. To me, is the most beautiful flower. So every week I buy myself white roses. Yes, my husband could buy me white roses, but I want to buy them for myself. I want to take care of me. I don't want to put that out on him that he needs to be the one buying me roses. You know what I mean? It's not his job. I get to take care of myself. I get to love myself. And I feel like the better care that I take of myself, the better care I can take of others. And I know when I start to like falter in taking care of myself and being there for myself and taking hot baths and walking in the grass and seeing the sky and buying myself flowers and doing the things that I know, drinking more water, I mean, getting to bed early, the things that I know that would take better care of me so that I can take better care of you. Those things matter a lot because they also change universes. My mom at some point made a choice not to take care of herself. And that rippled out to her children and rippled out to my grandchildren and rippled out to their children. Obviously, we're all doing the best we can. I'm not blaming her, but I'm saying, there's a lot of healing that had to go on as a result of that.
Of course, yeah.
And that would be my message: is take good care of yourself, do the things you need to do, and then allow yourself when you're moved to be kind and loving and to do it. Like I remember when I used to go to church, like they would bring the thing around to give money. What is that tray called? Anyway, offering tray.
Offering, yeah.
You're supposed to give a certain amount of money. And I remember
tithing.
Yeah, I didn't want to. And I was like, I don't want to give something that I don't want to give because it felt wrong. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. So then I started asking myself, what would you feel good about giving? And I would give that. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be real, like a real gift. Like I really wanted to give something, and I would give that. And if that was 50 cents, that was 50 cents. If that was $50, and that was $50. But it was like, it was going to be real. I would ask myself in each moment, what would bring you joy? And I think that's one thing that I do quite well, is I always ask myself, because we are here for bliss. So I ask myself, is this true for you? What is the most loving choice in this moment, this person, this situation? What is the most loving thing you could do in this person, place, thing? And first starting with me. And I always ask that question. I don't always do it. but I always ask it. I always try.
That's amazing. I think that's such a great message because we talked before about how most people watching are never going to have a near-death experience. But by listening to you, the little nuggets that you give them, which is something as simple as asking yourself, is this the most loving thing I can do, is something that the people listening can actually do. They can emulate that.
And it's powerful. It changes lifetimes. It changes universes. And we're supposed to be here for joy and bliss and to love each other and to love ourselves and to buy ourselves flowers, walk in the rain and to do whatever brings your heart joy. And usually
And to smell the grass and to watch the sunsets and really watch the sunrises and the sunsets and to hug
embrace
and
each other.
embrace each other.
Because
Yeah.
imagine if we are light beings, which I believe we are, we don't have a physical body, so we don't have the gift of this physical embrace. It's so powerful. When you pick that baby up and hug her, it's so powerful. And when you need a shoulder to cry on and someone's there for you, it's so powerful.
And
You-
even when you just touch somebody on the arm to let them know that you see them,
and that
that's
you can,
powerful too.
it's healing. You talk about,
Yeah.
are you a healer? The power of touch, because you're moving energy. It's healing. When you touch with that kind of benevolence and that kind of kindness and love, you're literally a healing force.
It's amazing. So I have two more questions I want to ask you. So I asked you in the life review about the positive things that you saw. Are you willing to share anything that will help the people watching to understand the ripple effect that we have when we do things with intention that are not for the highest and greatest good necessarily?
So I think I shared with you earlier that one of the gifts that I was born with is that I don't really ever intentionally go out and hurt someone. Like it's not in me. Like I'm really, it's a gift. I don't know how, but I have hurt people. And so in my near-death experience, what I saw is that many times we hurt people, but it's unintentional out of ignorance and maybe a little of entitlement or a little bit of, what do you call that? Like not noticing. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but you're not aware that you're hurting them, but you're just, and what I saw is that ripple, though it's not intentional, it's still a ripple. And what that really showed me wasn't necessarily that I went and hurt them on purpose, but the pain is still real for them and the consequences were still real. And the lesson for me was that if I don't heal myself, if I don't hold myself accountable, if I don't acknowledge those parts of me that are unconscious, then I will hurt others. And in so doing, I'm actually hurting myself. So the responsibility comes back to we're here to learn and to evolve. And this, they say ignorance of the law doesn't mean you're not breaking it. Like when you go past the stop sign, I didn't know I was supposed to, that's too bad. You still broke it and there's still a consequence. So how do you fix that? You learn about the laws and you do better next time, right? So I think the holding yourself accountable to continue to evolve. Like I don't ever think that I'm cooked, like I'm done, like I'm finished. I feel like there's another level.
Always.
I
Yeah.
do believe that we're all doing that the best that we can in each moment, even when we do our worst. And the proof is that we didn't do any better. So there's no sense in beating yourself up about it. One of the things I did not have in my near-death experience and I think again, because apparently, according to my ex-husband, I'm really good at forgiving myself, but I didn't have a lot of that shame about it. It was an acknowledgement that I did wrong and that I did hurt, and there was perhaps some guilt about that that it was more not even a guilt, more of I want to do better. Like I realized the importance of continuing to grow and not sitting on the couch of my own personal development, spiritual development. And I realized that if I did that, then I would inadvertently be hurting others because my ignorance, my oversights, my like even continuing to grow, like even in how I speak to someone so that I don't offend them by I thought I was just joking. That was a funny joke. It's not funny to them. You know what I mean? That's not. And I was seeing how they just something that I didn't mean intentionally that I had said that really affected them. They went home and cried about it, and it hurt them, and how they could never get over it, never looked at me the same, and blah blah blah. So those kinds of things. But again, it was more of an accountability to me to continue to grow. No one else was holding me accountable. We're all connected and our circumstances are all connected. And those people come into our lives to give us the opportunity to grow. And they knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. And we didn't know the outcome of it.
Right.
But I have to say, like, yeah, the accountability factor is there in your near death experience. And I think a lot of people come back. I remember reading George Ritchie's book, and he was taken to a realm, and I guess alcohol is an important subject for me based on my childhood, but he was taken to many different dimensions. And one of the realms he was taken to was he was taken to a tavern. And he saw that people, when they get intoxicated, that there's a hole in their aura, and all these lost beings, or people may call them demons, but I just say people who are still in the physical, so they're still stuck here, would jump into his body. And that's why a lot of people would say, like, when they have blackout, or I didn't know I was doing that. Yeah, you didn't do it. Somebody else did it. And then the aura, the holes in the aura get so big that you get dis-ease, and eventually can cause even your demise and death. But anyway, it was shown that he came back, and the rest of his life was dedicated to helping people with addictions. That was his, because it was so poignant for him that he really wanted to come back and help people with addictions. So I think when we see these things in near death experience, we get to come back. My near death experience wasn't so much about what I did, it was about what I get to do. My near death experience, my ripple effect was like, you get to choose this timeline. Is this what brings you joy? And that was like more interesting, at least from my perspective, than what I had done, good or bad, is like what I get to do now. And I think that's like a message I'd like to leave it with you, is that regardless of what you did or what you didn't do, good or bad, what you get to do now is what's so important. That you get to take better care of others. You get to be the one to make the change you want to see in the world. And that's exciting. That's exciting. We can't go back. What's done is done. That's for sure. But what we do now impacts the future and impacts the past. So we can change our past in the present moment only. And I never knew that until I had this near-death experience, where I realized that in this moment, I could go back and I could pick up Chrystal, and I could hold her, and I could tell that little girl, like, hey, you're going to be okay. In the future, you're going to have yoga studios. You're going to help all these people. You're going to be on podcasts. You just got to hang in there, baby girl. It's going to be okay. And I literally have gone back into the past and healed myself and carried myself. And likewise, I've gone from the present moment and to the future and asked imagine we've been here, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years, 60 years, 100 years. Imagine living 500 years. Imagine living 1,000 years. Imagine living 5,000 years, how much you would know, how much wisdom you would have. And so imagine if you were able to talk to your 5,000-year-old self in the future, in the present moment, and say, hey, I need some help here. I need some wisdom. I need some advice. And I probably can't understand 5,000 years in the future, because that's going to be too evolved. But could you give me some wisdom, maybe 50 years out? Like what? Because your energy accelerates. And so you probably couldn't even connect with that 5,000-year-old you, but you could connect with someone, let's say 10 years from now or 20 years from now, that exists. And an example I like to give about this idea is, and it's in my book, is about a Michelangelo painting. We could stand in front of a painting, and it was painted, it was created, this masterpiece 500 years ago. And to say this is the first time you see it. So you come up to it and you see it fresh with these eyes in the present moment. So you are carrying that 5,500 years, not 1,000, 500 years is brought right into the future, into the present moment through your eyes, right? In this moment. Okay, let's say 500 more years passed, right? And that person, or the person 500 years from now, looks at that painting again. Now it's 1,000 years, right? But it's still in the present moment. So the present moment the past and the future can meet in this space of the present moment. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I pulled the past forward, but also I could pull the future into the present moment. I can never get into the future and I can never get into the past. Like I always say, okay, try to get into the future. You can't. Like now, and the same is true of the past. Try to get, you can think about the past, you can remember the past, but you can never get there. So the past and the future are only available in the present moment. And by the way, they've already sent a laser out into the future and it's come back so fast that it's back before it left. That's time travel. Now, if they've done that to the past and back, they can do that to the future and back. And basically what I'm talking about with this Michelangelo painting is doing the same thing. Like you're literally just projecting to whatever time frame you want, whether it's 500 years past or 500 years future, and you're looking at it in this moment through conscious intent, because that 500 years is there, whether I know it or not. I'm looking at it right now, present moment, and that, let's say it's going to last 500 more years. That's also already inherently there, whether I'm aware of it or not. And I can see both of those things if I'm aware about the eternal now, which I call the eternal now, which there is no time. Everything is stacked upon itself. And that's where all change happens. So I get really deep about all of this in my book. I know it's kind of like, but yeah, I was shown that everything is already in completion, all timelines. And that's why I can say, I can guarantee everyone, you don't have to worry. You will not be lost. You will not be forsaken. You will not be left behind. It's a loving universe. You will find your way back, and you're given the gift if you want to get in the mud and get dirty and get in the darkness for eons of time, be lost, but you will find your way. It's a loving universe, and it's already happened anyway. But you can shift timelines anytime you want. You don't have to continue just because your parents did it or your grandparents did it, or that's what the collective energy of your energy field has been. You can be the one to be the cycle breaker. And how? I'll tell you how. Just love a little bit more, just a little bit, not too much, because you won't be able to sustain that. But in every moment, just choose a little bit more love, just a little bit more love, just a tiny bit more love. Like even a speck more love makes a difference. And it has this exponential like tipping point at some point where everything starts to just flow easier. So that's my answer to that. It's a long way around, but I hope
I love it.
it's helpful.
It's beautiful. Oh, I'm so happy. I always say this. I feel like the luckiest person in the world to get to have these conversations with somebody like you. I feel like we're kindred souls. I feel like we have so many things in common. It's like as you're talking, I buy flowers for myself. There's so many things. Like,
Oh my gosh.
yes, I mean, seriously, like I have this one vase that I will go to the grocery store, and these flowers are $5 for a rose, which is kind of expensive, I think. But I will pick out just one, the most beautiful rose, and I will pay attention to it. I will talk to it. I've gotten them to grow leaves on themselves. These are living beings. They have people on the other side talk about what they are really. So I cherish that, and I spend a lot of time smelling this flower and talking to this flower, and just, which may sound crazy to people watching, but I don't even care. But it's just one of the things I do.
I love that. I totally get that. And one of the things I like to do with roses is that I feel like everybody is all about the blossoming and the bloom. And one thing I like to think about, which I think the cycle of life that plants, animals teach us, is that there's something so beautiful also in the wilting. So
Yeah.
I will let my roses wilt and like the petals fall. And many times I'll collect them. I have in the past and made like potpourri. And potpourri is the most beautiful fragrance sound. And so I just like to, I don't know, I feel like the symbolic thing of that is that, yes, I love this beautiful rose. I like to buy it when it's a bud. I like to watch it open, and I also like to watch it wilt. And I know that I too am wilting and getting more fragrant, and I'm okay with that. And the reason I say that is because we know we live in this youthful driven society that doesn't acknowledge the wisdom and the beauty of the wilting. And it's so beautiful to be in this time of my life where I can actually talk about that from experience and be proud of that, you know?
So if people want to connect with you, we already talked about where they can find your book. Are you open to that? And how can people connect with you, your yoga studios, all of that?
So I have a Chrystal Rae soul, and that's spelled Chry. Rae is spelled Rae, and then Soul, Soul, of course. And that's my website, Chrystal Rae Soul. And I have a speakers page there. So I am available for doing speaking events for large groups and podcasts and such. And yes, I have my yoga studios are also on that website. So there'll be a link there. So I have yoga studios in Dallas, teacher trainings in Dallas. So I'm happy to also just answer emails and answer questions, because I feel like it's something that and again, I don't think I have all the answers, but I have a perspective,
You
and
do.
it's a unique perspective, and it might be helpful. And I always say, whatever is helpful, keep it, and whatever doesn't resonate as true, just let it go. Just let it go. But I think that most importantly, like, I'd like to leave everyone with the idea that yes, love is all that matters. And if we want to really impact the world, we just have to love a little bit more. That's it. And how can we love ourselves? How can we love others in like real ways? I'm not saying go to the Himalayas and get on top of a mountain and light incense and meditate daily. I'm just saying, can you step over an ant? Can you be kind to a plant? Can you help somebody in need? Can you, when you're moved to do something, do it. Just do it. Not because you're going to get any accolades for it, but just because you can, because it brings your soul joy to do it. And you'll know, because you'll just feel like afterwards, like you're just going to feel enlivened. You're going to feel like that was so good. That was so delicious.
I love it. Oh, well, Chrystal, I am so honored that you came on to talk to us and share your wisdom. I'm going to say, I love you.
Oh, I love you too, Lori, so much.
Thank you. And thank you so
My
much.
sister, and I'm grateful for you. You're doing such good work. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. And thank you so much,
Whatever.
everybody who got to the end of this.
Huh?
Thank you to everybody who got to the end of this. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.